I want to go back to the question of the role of the courts. And in particular, for fans of limited government, how much can one expect to get those limits out of the courts as compared to out of Congress or state legislatures? So people disagree on what the Constitution means in good faith, just different people have different views. And history suggests that presidents are going to nominate people that will tend to further their political views, and probably senators, history suggests, will tend to vote in favor of or against nominees based on whether they think that nominee will favor their political views. And if that's true, how do you get courts to impose limits that are contrary to the interests of the nominating president and the affirming senators? Is it sort of baked in that the courts can't get very counter-majoritarian? And if so, what does that mean in terms of fans of limited government seeking relief either from the courts or from legislature?
Right. I mean, I think it's a tough question, actually. I think one of the things that's going to be the most dramatic change over time with the Supreme Court, and whether it's more or less ideological, is the fact that we're doing it by simple majority now. And we went a long time saying you had to get 60 votes, and the only really controversial one was Clarence Thomas, who I frankly think is the best justice. But you know, he won 52-48. But now you're going to get a lot. Gorsuch, I think, won, what, 56, 44. He had a couple of Democrats, but it was very partisan. But I think you will see a little more of a partisan tilt of the Supreme Court and the appellate courts because we're doing it through simple majority. How do you set limits? This is where I have the mixed feelings on whether I'm for more judicial engagement versus restraint, because on the one hand, I do think the Constitution means something, and I think the limits are real and in there. But I think I see most of majoritarian government, most of the things being passed by government, as contrary to the limits. It's not that we're overturning too many bad laws. We got way too many laws being promulgated that are completely ignoring the Constitution. In fact, if I were to look at, let's say we pass 500 pieces of legislation next year, I would say probably 495 of them are unconstitutional because there is no explicit authority or power. We've gotten to, you know, we debate philosophically whether it's a real original constitution or a living document or a living constitution. It's absolutely only a living constitution according to the legislature. Now, that's my opinion. There are my dad used to make the joke. He said the only two things that will be completely discounted and not regarded as an argument and debate would be morality and constitutionality. And so I think we don't really live in a republic, a constitutional republic. I think we really do live in almost a pure democracy right now. And because of that, there isn't a restraint on the size of growth of government. And because there is no restraint in debt, government can do anything. So we're going to pass, you know, my family lives in Florida. My sister's got 2 feet of water in her house as we speak. But the $8 billion they want to give, I'm going to ask them they take it from some other part of the budget. But I'll be the only one. My staff looked this up. In 2012, I did the same thing. I got only 3 votes. I think it was Mike Lee, myself, and Heller voted in 2012 to offset it by taking foreign aid money we're going to give to someone else and actually giving it to our own people instead because we're out of money. People say, oh, no, we should help the poor people in other countries and help our poor people in our country, too. And it's like, where's the money going to come from? We're $500 billion in debt this year. We'll be $1 trillion in debt next year. And the only argument you can make for not offsetting the spending is, oh, but I'm compassionate. I want to help people. And that's the biggest problem we have in Washington is we have a big heart, small brain syndrome. And everybody's compassionate with someone else's money. You know, try asking people to give some of their own money, and we'll see how far that goes. But it's always easier to give somebody else's money. But I don't know if I answered your question. It's a tough question because I think that we should be restrained, and our justices should be restrained by the Constitution. Jefferson talked about the chains of the Constitution. They were supposed to mean something, not on the people, not to restrain the people, but to restrain, you know, the legislature, and the courts were supposed to be part of that. But we've gotten so far away from that, you know, for so long. Once the Interstate Commerce Clause began to mean anything, you know, that didn't, you know, that even domestic manufacturing within a state could be, you know, because eventually it got on a road somewhere and eventually went somewhere, we could, you know, regulate all domestic. Once we decided that, we decided we could regulate anything. And now that Justice Roberts says, well, we'll just call it a tax, you can regulate anything in the world, just call it a tax. So if, you know, what was the case they talked about, we can make you eat broccoli? Well, we're not going to penalize you, we're going to tax you for not eating broccoli. And that would be fine with Justice Roberts. Hope he's not listening.